At Juliet's mother's house, Dave was introduced to Inspector Ned, the officer handling Juliet's disappearance. "Tell me everything you know," Inspector Ned said. "Was Juliet acting strangely? Does she have any enemies that we should know of?" Dave hesitated at first. Would he say it? Would he say he received pictures? He took a deep breath. "I received pictures of her. With different men," he admitted. His voice was heavy, ashamed. Gasps filled the room. The inspector's face hardened. "Let me see them," he said. Juliet's parents were shocked. The doctor they believed was a saint had lived a double life, but the pictures were their only clue to find her. The investigation took a new direction. Using the pictures as a lead, the police raided Chief Leo's mansion. They found Juliet locked in one of the luxurious rooms, shaken but unharmed. Chief Leo was immediately brought in for questioning. "It had nothing to do with those pictures," he said coldly. "Clara told me about the wedding. That's all I know." But Inspector Ned was not convinced. The authorities were determined to trace the source of the pictures. The truth must be exposed. The news of Juliet's double life spread like wildfire, and soon whispers turned into open mockery. Everywhere, people gossiped about her, their words sharp as daggers. Unable to face the world, Juliet confined herself within her parents' home, drowning in shame. 2 days after she was rescued, Juliet waited. Dave had not come to see her. He hadn't replied at messages nor answered her calls. The silence crushed her. Determined, she went to his house. She had to fix things. She had to make him understand. Her hands trembled as she knocked. The door was opened. She stepped inside, only to freeze at the sound of raised voices. "Why are you so worked up?" Clara's voice was sharp. "It was just one night. Besides, Juliet betrayed you first." Juliet's breath caught in her throat. What? Dave's response came like a blow to the chest. "Clara, I don't even remember what happened. And you know I was vulnerable. You took advantage of me." Juliet felt her words tilt. The room blurred at the edges. Clara's voice softened, dripping with false sweetness. "Dave, don't you see? I care for you. I always have." Juliet's heart pounded. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Clara, you?" Before anyone could respond, Juliet's phone rang in her hand. She barely glanced at the screen before answering. It was Inspector Ned. The words that followed shattered everything. "Juliet, we traced the number that sent the pictures," Inspector Ned said. "The person responsible has come first." Juliet's finger tightened around the phone. "Who was it?" she said. "It was Clara. She paid them to send the pictures," Inspector Ned replied. The air left Juliet's lungs. The phone slipped from her grasp. It hit the floor with a dull thud. But Juliet barely heard it. Her gaze lifted, locking onto Clara. Clara, the best friend she had trusted. The friend who had whispered in her ear, convincing her to meet Chief Leo. Clara, who now stood before her, unflinching, unapologetic, with her fiancé. For the first time, Juliet truly saw her, and it was a nightmare. The weight of betrayal pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Her throat was dry, but she forced out the question anyway. "Clara, why?" Clara tilted her head, arms folded across her chest. There was no guilt in her expression, only something colder, resentment. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "You always get everything, Juliet. The attention, the admiration, the love, and then Dave? Dave, who should have seen me all along?" Juliet's stomach twisted. Clara's voice dropped lower, filled with bitterness. I waited. I watched. You paraded your perfect relationship while I sat there, invisible. But the moment I had a chance, I took it. Because for once, I wanted to be the one that was chosen. Juliet couldn't believe what she was hearing. I trusted you, she said. You were my best friend. Clara's lip curled in a bitter smile. And yet you lied to Dave. You used men for money. You called off the wedding to protect yourself, not him. So tell me, Juliet, am I really the only villain here? Silence filled the air. The words cut deep because in some ways they were true. But before Juliet could respond, Dave spoke. His voice was quiet, strained. Clara, did we actually have anything? He held his gaze, but this time she didn't answer. That silence told him everything. Dave's jaw clenched. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. I need to be alone. Clara scoffed. Of course you do. She grabbed a bag and turned towards the door. But before she could leave, the sound of sirens filled the air. A firm knock echoed through the apartment. Then Inspector Ned's voice rang out. Clara, you are under arrest for conspiracy, cyber harassment, and obstruction of justice. Clara froze. Her eyes widened as the two officers stepped inside. Wait, what? The officers moved swiftly, one pulling out the handcuffs, while the other read her rights. You paid someone to send false evidence, tampered with an investigation, and aided in the unlawful detention of Juliet. We have enough evidence to charge you. Clara's face twisted in shock, then rage. She turned to Juliet. You did this! You caused this! Juliet's expression was unreadable. She looked at Clara and replied, No, Clara, you did this to yourself. The officers secured the cuffs around Clara's wrist. She struggled, her voice rising. I only wanted what was mine. He should have chosen me, she shouted. Dave didn't even look at her. She screamed in frustration as he dragged her away. For the first time, Juliet felt a strange sense of relief. Clara's betrayal had shattered her. At least now, she wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else. The room was quiet now, just Juliet and Dave. But the air between them was heavy, thick with everything left unsaid. Juliet swallowed, stepping forward. Dave, he shook his head. I don't know, Juliet. His voice wasn't angry, just exhausted. I don't know how to process all of this. Her eyes stunk. I never wanted to hurt you. I was desperate. And I know that's not an excuse, but he swallowed hard. I love you. Dave let out a slow breath. I know you do. A flicker of hope sparked in her chest, but his next words crushed it. But love isn't all enough, he said. Juliet's hands sank. He rubbed his temples, then finally met her gaze. We need time to heal, to figure out if there's even a way forward. Her hands trembled, and she looked at Dave one more time. And if there isn't, Dave didn't answer. And maybe, right now, that was the only answer